The Highlands Burn by Joe Kasabian. Before I say anything else, I do just want to say this book isn't out yet. I was given an ARC for it in exchange for a fair review. Yay! And I've now read two books by this author, or two fiction books by this author. Invisible War, which I have right here and I did a video on a couple of years ago, and now The Highlands Burn. And I felt they were both enjoyable. I liked both of them. But they also both had some major issues. Of these two books, one of them is military science fiction and the other one is fantasy. Those are both genres that I love. They are both very near and dear to my heart. And they both did unique stuff with their genre. Like, they both had some stuff in there that I was like, oh, okay, I haven't seen it quite done this way before. And both of them just were not long enough. In fact, I would say that's like 70% of my issue with The Highlands Burn is that stuff rushes by without enough time to sink in.
This is the introduction song. It's not very good, but it's not too long.
Like, it really does feel like we're rushing from plot point to plot point, and there's just not enough time taken for these plot points to really sink in and for me to really feel that, okay, yes, I feel the emotions we're going for here. I feel the triumph. I feel sad. I feel happy, angry, whatever. Like, there's just not enough time for that. The book, it just needed to slow down.
Everybody got that?
Stop me if you've heard this before. The Highlands Burn is about a 17-year-old boy named Sayat who lives in a small town in an isolated area. Some bad guys come in one day, they destroy his town and kill almost everyone there, and then Sayat goes out on a quest for vengeance. He joins a mercenary company, learns a secret about himself, and from there, the story unfolds. Yeah, the beginning isn't super original, which isn't a problem in and of itself, but it's outside of that. Even if we set aside that it's kind of the generic fantasy opening, the beginning here is a bit rough. Because if you're going to write the generic fantasy opening where character lives in a village, village is destroyed, and then he goes on a quest, like, you gotta do something different with it, or just do it very well. And in the Highlands Burn case, that's not what happens. Like, it's played very, very straight, and they don't do anything different with it, and it also just happens way, way too quickly. Like, we basically have one chapter introducing us to Sayat and his village and the world he lives in, and then everything goes to shit immediately. Like, there is no time to get accustomed to this. So we don't really have enough time to get to know Sayat or his village, and we certainly don't get time to care about them. Like, I started caring about Sayat later as the story went on, but at the beginning he was just there. There wasn't much to say about him. There's also a lot of very clumsy exposition at the start. Like, a character will say a thing and, like, reference some god or some cultural thing about this world, and then there will be a paragraph of explanation immediately afterwards, and then some other character will respond to them, and then a paragraph of exposition afterwards. So, like, it just feels really clumsy. The beginning really needed a rewrite. So if you read this book and you think the beginning is rough, I agree, but it does get better after that. Like, once you reach, like, the 10% mark, the book gets a lot better. And I will say that whatever else is wrong with the opening, it does do a good job of making us hate the villains, because they are nasty people. Like, they come in, and again, they kill pretty much this entire town full of people in a variety of very brutal ways, and then they also take a bunch of the survivors captives to sell them as slaves later. And we see the way that they're treated, and you just immediately think, yeah, fuck these guys. These guys suck. I don't like them, and I'm with Sayat on his quest for vengeance.
Good. Fuck them.
And of course, that brings me to Sayat, the protagonist of these books. The people who destroyed his village, at first they think they're just bandits, but then they realize, oh, okay, this is an actual mercenary company. They're called the Free Rifles. And for a while, they actually think, like, okay, so there's no war going on, so these guys just don't have any way to make any money, so they're turning to banditry, and that's why that's why they destroyed our town. They're just stealing stuff. And we later learn that there's actually a lot more complicated political maneuvering going on behind the scenes, and that's actually a very interesting reveal when it comes. But at first, that's just what they think. And then so Sayat goes off and joins a rival mercenary company fighting against the Free Rifles called the Foundling Brigade, and he swears revenge. The main issue with him swearing revenge and that being his main motivation to go through the story is that there's no single person that he is trying to focus on. He just wants to fight the free rifles as a whole and destroy them as a whole. And that just makes it feel kind of unfocused. And granted, that is realistic. Like, sometimes a bad thing happens to you and you gotta rebuild your life and you just feel kind of listless, but it's not really fun to read about, you know? Like, if there had been a moment during the battle where everything's being destroyed where Sayat, like, saw the leader of the free rifles, or he saw the specific guy who killed his parents or something, and then he's like, yes, I want revenge on all of them, but especially that guy in particular I hate, then that would help focus his feelings, and it would help the audience feel like the anger and the hate and the injustice that he feels. It's kind of like that game Kingdom Come Deliverance, which is not an amazing game, but it opens in a very similar way. The main character, Henry, sees his entire village get destroyed. However, there is one specific soldier, or knight I should say, who's fighting, who he sees kill both of his parents, so that's the guy he's focused on, and that's the guy he wants revenge on. Now, I will say, minor spoilers here, near the end of the Highlands Burn, we do meet the person who I think is the specific person who killed Sayat's dad, and so maybe they will be more the focus of his ire in later books, but we'll just have to wait and see. Now, other than that complaint, though, I did like Sayat. I thought he was a very good protagonist to follow. Normally, when characters like Sayat go out on a quest, they're going out into the wider world, so they don't know anything about what's going on, and they have to rely on others to guide them and make sure they don't get into trouble. And if this isn't handled very well, they wind up doing a bunch of stupid bullshit and getting themselves into trouble anyways, just for the sake of cheap drama. However, in the Highlands Burn, after Sayat's home is destroyed, the war is still taking place in the Highlands. Like, that's the area he's from. It's basically his backyard. So he actually knows what's going on. Like, he knows the local geography, he knows the local tribal politics, he knows the local culture and customs, he speaks the local language, which most of his friends don't. So, for the most part, he's actually acting as a guide for them. It's a very nice inversion from what we usually see. You know, it helps to showcase that Sayat, yeah, he's 17, and he's kind of dumb in the way you expect a 17-year-old boy to be dumb, and he is ignorant about some things, but overall, he is still an intelligent and capable guy, and he is, you know, he has knowledge that is useful, you know? Like, there's a scene later on in the book where he actually manages to capture a spy, basically, and it was someone who was very, very good at blending in and pretending to be one of the locals, but Sayat was able to notice that, no, that guy's not one of us, there's something else going on here. I also really liked that Sayat, yeah, he's on a quest for vengeance and he's filled with rage, but he's still overall a pretty nice guy. Like, he always takes time to look out for the less fortunate, and he feels awful about all the violence that's around him. Like, he doesn't just feel awful about the violence he witnesses, he feels awful about the violence he inflicts on others. But he also understands that the violence he's inflicting is kind of necessary. And he does have some cool magic powers. They're not that powerful, really, but he has them and they're kind of cool. Because in this world, mages are called, I believe it's pronounced etheri, because they can reach into the ether, which is the home of dead souls, and then they can draw power from it, and then use that power to do stuff, like turn themselves invisible or shoot out fireballs and stuff. And Sayat is somebody who is not an etheri, but he can sense their magic, which only a minority of people can do. And that isn't really relevant at the beginning. Like, Sayat is just a guy who can see in the dark at the beginning, and then later on someone's like, oh hey, you actually have some magic powers. And it's still not, again, super relevant until about 2/3 of the way through the book, but I'm not gonna get into that too much. I just want to say that he doesn't have his power handed to him. He has to actually work and train and earn it, and even by the end of the book, you can tell he's still very inexperienced and not that good at using it, but hopefully he will continue to grow and get better as the series continues. And the magic is cool too. Like, the etheri hear some of the screams of the dead when they reach out into the land of the dead, and oftentimes they have drug and alcohol dependencies because of that. Like, it slowly drives them insane when they use their powers, but it's not just magically going, ooh, they're mad now, ooh. Like, Wheel of Time kind of does this. Like, I think it's handled pretty well, all things considered, but that's basically what it is in Wheel of Time, is like, yeah, just, the magic just drives you mad, whatever that means. Whereas in this, yeah, you would probably be under some distress if you were hearing the screams of the dead all the time. That makes sense.
I've been better. I've been worse.
The most notable Ithiri in this story is a mercenary who works alongside Sayat and the others named Genkos, and the vibe I got from him throughout the entire book is that he is right on the edge of a psychotic break. Like, he's friendly enough, and he's on the good guy's side, but he is right on the edge of something bad happening, and you can't really blame him for it. And as cool as all the magic is in this book, the technology is like 19th century level, so they have semi-modern guns and artillery, they have trains and airships and stuff, are at least mentioned, so magic is just less useful than it used to be in the past, back when everyone still had swords and bows and arrows, which is a very neat idea to explore. It's not something that comes up that often, but I do like it when it happens. Like, I think the Grisha trilogy, Shadow and Bone, actually handled this idea pretty well, because that also has, like, 19th century level technology, and it's just interesting, because we have this overwhelming powerful force, which is slowly becoming less relevant and less overwhelming and powerful. So, I don't know, it's just something that I wish more fantasy would cover. But now I need to elaborate a bit on my biggest problem that I mentioned earlier, which is that the book is just way too short. There's scenes in here that fly by without any chance for us to feel anything or for anything to really leave an impact. The best example of this I can think of is there's a scene where Sayat sees a starving kid in a refugee camp, and he just gives him some bread, or gives him some food. And he's like, yeah, okay, it's just him doing something kind. And then immediately the kid runs off, gets beaten up, the food gets stolen, and Sayat witnesses this, and it's all described exactly like I just did. It's like 3 sentences. There's no time to stew in the tragedy or the indignation of the situation. Sayat's friends just tell him, yeah, it's kind of like that sometimes, life sucks, and then we just move on to the next thing. And that's how a lot of this book feels. Later on, the characters are on the receiving end of a siege that lasts several months, and it doesn't feel like it lasts several months. Like, the way it's written, it feels like it's only been a couple of days, and it was only after characters mentioned that they've been here most of the winter that I realized, oh, okay, this was much longer. And ultimately, that's a problem from not just letting us exist with these characters for a bit, letting us exist in the world that they inhabit. I think Harry Potter is uniquely good about this sort of thing, because it will make you feel like an entire school year has passed over the course of the book. And what this all boils down to is what people mean when they say show, don't tell. When they say show, don't tell, that's oftentimes a shorthand, and it just means that I didn't buy the emotions that you were trying to show me. Like, if you just have a character say, I am sad, then the audience isn't really gonna feel sad along with them, and they aren't really gonna buy into this guy being sad. But if you show them crying and show them acting weird and everything, then that's when the audience goes, okay, yeah, this guy's sad, and you didn't need to come right out and say anything. That's how a lot of this book feels, especially when characters are trying to explain aspects of their viewpoint on life or aspects of how the world works or something. Like, sometimes you don't need to have them come right out and say it. You can just show it and we'll get the gist of it. But in order to show it properly, you just need to describe it some more and just spend some more time with it. And that ties into my problems with some of this book's exposition, which it's not universal, but a lot of the time the exposition in here is just weird and kind of clumsy. Like, you'll have characters who talk normally for the most part, and then when they get to the point where they need to explain something, their way they speak will just change so that it's like they're reciting a textbook entry. And look, it makes sense for them to get out some expository dialogue in these situations, yes. it just sounded kind of weird. Like, it just needed a rewrite. Sure, there are some people who talk like they're giving a lecture in an academic setting or something, but those tend to be people who are like professional historians and anthropologists and stuff. Like, I've met some of these people. I know they do sometimes talk that way. But the characters in this book are largely uneducated soldiers who are out on campaign. Even if they have that knowledge, when they explain it, they're going to word it in a more colloquial manner. Like, and this is, I think, advice that could go and be helpful for a lot of fantasy and sci-fi authors, but just like, have your characters talk like humans sometimes. Like, show the dialogue to someone who is not super into fantasy and science fiction. Ask them how they would say it instead. Like, just word it as if you're having a conversation with a friend.
Why you booing me? I'm right.
All of that said, though, The Highlands Burn is an enjoyable book. The characters all have a fun rapport. They all have moments of camaraderie, so we see that, yeah, even though these aren't always the friendliest or nicest people, we see why they stick together, and we know that they always have each other's backs. And there's one scene in particular where it's mentioned that they all really, really hate military police, and that one felt kind of personal, but at the same time, most military veterans I've spoken to have had similar feelings on MPs, so I guess that's a universal thing. And I kind of touched on this earlier, but later there's a big reveal. I'm not going to call it a plot twist, really, but there's a big reveal about how this war started and why Sayat's village was destroyed in the first place. And I'm not going to get into that here, even though it's not really a big twist, so I don't think it's really a spoiler. I'm just not going to get into it here. I'm just going to say that the book was making a very interesting point about how sometimes colonialism can start in a very, very subtle way before it explodes and becomes much less pleasant. I also liked how the religion is handled in this book, because there's a couple of different religions that get mentioned, and it doesn't go into like extreme detail about all of their beliefs and all their theology and everything, but it's handled better than in most fantasy books, because most of the time in fantasy, how do I put this? Religion can feel kind of fake because all the gods and spirits and stuff will be confirmed to be real, and they're really out there doing all this stuff. And even if the characters don't have it completely right, there's still some sort of powerful magical entity that people mistook for a god, is often how it goes. But in The Highlands Burned, it's handled much more realistically. Like, people believe in various gods and spirits, and that's it. Like, they don't exist as far as we know, or at least there's no confirmation that they exist in this book, that there's just people who think that, and none of them really know for certain, and that's how it works in real life. So yeah, I did appreciate that, and more fantasy books need to handle religion in that way. And while there is some religious conflict here, it's also made pretty clear that there are good and bad followers of every belief system, so I don't know, it's just handled pretty well so far, and hopefully the sequels keep that up. I don't have a whole lot else to say, though. The Highlands Burn is an enjoyable book. It comes out in May, but it's available for pre-order now, so if it interests you, go pre-order it now. That's about all I have to say. Goodbye. Aloha! Thank you to everybody who watched this far. Especially a big thanks to my patrons, including my $10 and up patrons, who are 3 Cat Day, Arthur D. Gonzalez Martin, Brother Santotis, Carolina Clay, Chaotic Entity 1, Chris Goldap, Lexi DeLorme, Lord Tiebreaker, Michael and Katie Hake, Mr. A5013, Proscriptions of Zhuojang, Psych XS, Toa Michael, Tomioka, Ve Victus, and Wesley. Them, along with all the other names here, I couldn't do it without you guys. Thank you so much. It really does mean the world to me. If you want to get your name on here and also get early access to videos and exclusive content that you can't find anywhere else, consider donating to my Patreon page. If you don't feel like donating over on Patreon, you can also become a YouTube channel member. Did you know I'm on Cameo? You can get a shout out from me over there. You can check out my merch store. If you don't feel like doing any of that, then simply rating the video and commenting on the video and subscribing to my channel if you haven't already, that works too. I appreciate all of you. Aloha. That means goodbye as well.